Prepare IAS coaching is one of the best institutions for the IAS and PCS coaching in Lucknow. This is the address and this is the website and also the contact number. You can contact them to get further guidance for your preparation. So hello everyone. In this video, we'll do the daily current affairs analysis of the articles or news items which were in news on 29th September 2021. So what are the topics which we will discuss? First, we will discuss about the caste census, what it is, the background, and why it is needed. What are some of the challenges associated with it? We will see. Next, we will see the Punjab desertification in 25 years, like the level of desertification which has taken place in Punjab, how it has increased in the last 20-25 years. We will see, and also we will see what are the negative consequences of desertification and on various flora and fauna, on the ecosystem, on the economic level, and also on the human development. Of the population, and what are the steps which can be taken to reduce the impact of desertification. We will see. Next, we will study about Bhagat Singh because he has been in news recently because of his birth anniversary. So, National Disaster Management Authority will be our next topic of discussion. We'll discuss about its composition, its powers, and the details about it. We'll see. Next, we will see the National Action Plan for Dog-Mediated Rabies Elimination because the World Rabies Day was celebrated recently. So we'll discuss this. Next is the anti-defection law for independent legislatures. Okay, we'll see the background of the anti-defection law. What are the key features of this, issues associated, and what are the steps or measures suggested by some of the expert committees or election commission of India. Will see that. Next is the burden of climate change on children born today. We will see this news which has been news recently. Next is the Jojila Tunnel and the World Maritime Day. These are important for prelims specifically. So first topic in news is the caste census. It is important for GS paper 2. Topic is government policies and interventions for development in various sectors and issues arising out of their design and implementation. So why it has been in news? The Union government last week told the Supreme Court that the caste-based data enumerated in the socio-economic caste census (SECC) of 2011 was unusable, but in 2016, the Registrar General and Census Commissioner of India had informed the Standing Committee on Rural Development that 98.87% of the data on individual caste and religion was error-free. So why the data is unusable according to the government? The government had said that the total number of castes surveyed in 1931 was 4,147, while the SECC figures show that there are more than 46 lakh different castes. So there is a discrepancy in the total number of castes. While in 1931, the government, the details were that there were total 4147 castes, while the SECC census of 2011 showed that there are more than 46 lakh different castes in India. So assuming that some castes may bifurcate into subcastes, the total number cannot be exponentially high to this extent. So this is one of the major anomalies in the SECC census 2011. So the entire exercise was corrupted because the enumerators had used different spellings for the same castes. In many cases, the respondents, the government said, had refused to divulge their castes. How have caste details been collected so far? So while the SC/ST details are collected as part of the census, details of other castes are not collected by the enumerators. So the main method is by self-declaration to the enumerator. So far, backward classes commissions in various states have been conducting their own counts to ascertain the population of backward castes. So what kind of caste data is published in the census? This is also particularly important for prelims. So every census in independent India from 1951 to 2011 has published data on scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, but not on other castes. Before that, every census until 1931 had data on caste. So what is SECC 2011? The socio-economic caste census of 2011 was a major exercise to obtain data about the socio-economic status of various communities. It had two components: a survey of the rural and urban households and ranking of their households based on preset parameters, and a caste census. So what it involved, the SECC 2011, there were two components. Firstly, a survey of the rural and urban households, and next the ranking of these households based on preset parameters, and also caste census was involved in SECC 2011. So however, only the details of the economic conditions of the people in rural and urban households were released. The caste data has not been released till now. This is particularly important for prelims. Okay, so difference between census and SECC. So the census provides a portrait of the Indian population, while the SECC is a tool to identify beneficiaries of state support. Since the census falls under the Census Act of 1948, all data are considered confidential, whereas all the personal information given in the SECC is open for use by government departments to grant and or restrict benefits to households. So this is the major difference between the census and the SECC. So now we will see the pros of caste census. The precise number of the population of each caste would help tailor the reservation policy to ensure equitable representation of all of them. So concerns as stated, there is a possibility that it will lead to heartburn among some sections and spawn demands for larger or separate quotas. It has been alleged that the mere act of labeling persons as belonging to a caste tends to perpetuate the system. So the prelims important topics are: what is a census? Statutory provisions in this regard. How is the census carried out? Highlights of the census 2011. About the National Commission for Backward Communities. The source of this news is The Hindu. Next is the Punjab desertification in 25 years. It is the topic from GS paper 3. Topic is disaster management. So why it is in news? The Punjab Vidhan Sabha Committee, constituted to study water table depletion, has recently said that the state will turn into a desert in the next 25 years if the present trend of drawing water from underground aquifers continues. This is a prediction that has been made before. Over 2 decades ago, a study on water table depletion in Punjab, the State of the World Report 1998, had projected almost the same time frame of 25 years, saying aquifers in Punjab could be depleted by 2025. How alarming is the water situation in Punjab really? Out of 138 blocks in Punjab, 109 have already gone into the dark or overexploited zone, which means groundwater extraction is more than 100% here. Two fall under the dark or critical zone. Groundwater extraction is between 90 to 100%, while 5 are under semi-critical. Groundwater extraction is between 70 to 90%. So this means that around 80% blocks of the state have already dried up and 4% are on the verge of it. So water availability at 3 to 10 meters, which needs a centrifugal pump to extract water, is the most desirable, but currently water is available at 20 to 30 meters or more than 30 meters down in around 80% of the Punjab region. So reasons for this scarcity: more water is being drawn than it is being replenished. The rate of water extraction in Punjab is 1.66 times against the rate of replenishment. So because of the adoption of a faulty cropping pattern, paddy crop hampers water recharging because of the puddling method used to prepare fields for transplanting. So what needs to be done? Farmers must be incentivized to choose cropping patterns that require less water and go for drip irrigation or other water management mechanisms to save our only available deeper aquifers. Source of this information is the Indian Express. Next is Bhagat Singh. GS paper 1 topic is the freedom struggle, its various stages and important contributions from different parts of the country. So why it has been in news? 28th September is the birth anniversary of revolutionary freedom fighter Bhagat Singh. So this is Bhagat Singh. It is a file photo of freedom fighter Bhagat Singh. So key facts about him. Bhagat Singh was born in 1907 in Layalpur district, now in Pakistan, and grew up in a Sikh family deeply involved in political activities. In 1923, Bhagat Singh joined the National College Lahore, which was founded and managed by Lala Lajpat Rai and Bhai Parmanand. In 1924, in Kanpur, he became a member of the Hindustan Republican Association (HRA), started by Sachendra Nath Sanyal a year earlier. So in 1928, HRA was renamed from Hindustan Republican Association to Hindustan Socialist Republican Association (HSRA). In 1925-26, Bhagat Singh and his colleagues started a militant youth organization called the Naujawan Bharat Sabha. So all these things are very, very important from the prelims point of view. You have to remember this because there can be a question where there can be, a table giving the details, names of the freedom fighters or the important contributors, and besides that the names of the associations with which they are associated. Okay, so you have to remember this. In 1927, he was first arrested on charges of association with the Kakori case, accused for an article written under the pseudonym Vidrohi Rebel. In 1928, Lala Lajpat Rai had led a procession to protest against the arrival of the Simon Commission. The police resorted to a brutal lathi charge in which Lala Lajpat Rai was severely injured and later succumbed to his injuries. To take revenge for the death of Lala Lajpat Rai, Bhagat Singh and his associates plotted the assassination of James A. Scott, the superintendent of police. However, the revolutionaries mistakenly killed K.P. Saunders. The incident is famously known as Lahore Conspiracy Case of 1929. Bhagat Singh and B.K. Dutt also threw a bomb on 8 April 1929 in the Central Legislative Assembly in protest against the passing of two repressive bills, the Public Safety Bill and the Trade Dispute Bill. So the aim was not to kill but to make the deaf hear and to remind the foreign government of its callous exploitation. So the trial which was held, both Bhagat Singh and B.K. Dutt surrendered thereafter and faced trial so they could further promote their cause. They were awarded life imprisonment for this incident. However, Bhagat Singh was rearrested for the murder of J.P. Saunders and bomb manufacturing in the Lahore conspiracy case. He was found guilty in this case and was hanged on 23rd March 1931 in Lahore along with Sukhdev and Rajguru. Every year, March 23 is observed as the Martyrs' Day as a tribute to freedom fighters Bhagat Singh, Sukhdev, and Rajguru. So, prelims important topics are about HRA, about HSRA, about the Naujawan Bharat Sabha, about the Kakori conspiracy case, and also about the Lahore conspiracy case. You have to study all these things in detail. So, source of this news is the Hindu. Next is the National Disaster Management Authority. It is from GS paper 2. Topic is statutory, regulatory and various quasi-judicial bodies. So why it is in news? 17th Foundation Day of National Disaster Management Authority (NDMA) was celebrated on 28 September. So about NDMA, the National Disaster Management Authority (NDMA) is the apex statutory body for disaster management in India. It was constituted on 27 September 2006 under the Disaster Management Act 2005. NDMA is mandated to lay down the policies, plans and guidelines for disaster management. India envisions the development of an ethos of prevention, mitigation, preparedness, and response. So this is the basic outline of India's disaster management program. That first we'll try to prevent, next we'll try to mitigate the impact of the disasters, and further we will be focusing on preparedness and next on the response. Okay, so prevention, mitigation, preparedness and response. Okay, PMPR. So Disaster Management Act envisaged the creation of National Disaster Management Authority (NDMA) headed by the Prime Minister, and State Disaster Management Authority (SDMAs) headed by respective chief ministers to spearhead and implement a holistic and integrated approach to disaster management in India. So functions and responsibilities of NDMA. NDMA as the apex body is mandated to lay down the policies, plans and guidelines for disaster management to ensure timely and effective response to disasters. Towards this, it has the following responsibilities: lay down policies on disaster management, approve the national plan, approve plans prepared by the ministries or departments of the Government of India in accordance with the national plan, lay down guidelines to be followed by the state authorities in drawing up the state plan, lay down guidelines to be followed by the different ministries or departments of the Government of India for the purpose of integrating the measures for prevention of disaster or the mitigation of its effects in their development plans and projects. So these are the responsibilities of the NDMA. You can use all these fodder material in mains answers. Okay, so coordinate the enforcement and implementation of the policy and plans for disaster management. Recommend provision of funds for the purpose of mitigation of disasters. Provide such support to other countries affected by major disasters as may be determined by the central government. Take such other measures for the prevention of disaster or the mitigation or preparedness and capacity building for dealing with threatening disaster situations or disasters as it may be considered necessary. Also lay down the broad policies and guidelines for the functioning of the National Institute of Disaster Management. So all these things you can use in mains answers. Okay, you can keep these things in mind while writing mains answers. So prelims hot link. The important topics for prelims are: what is DM Act? What is Disaster Management Act 2005? Bodies established under this act, composition of the NDMA and the SDMA, powers of states and center under the Disaster Management Act, what is a notified disaster, and functions of NDRF. The source of this news is The Hindu. Next is the National Action Plan for Dog-Mediated Rabies Elimination. It is from GS paper 2 and topic is issues relating to development and management of social sector, services relating to health, education, human resources. So why it is in news? On the occasion of World Rabies Day, central government has unveiled the National Action Plan for Dog-Mediated Rabies Elimination (NAPRE) by 2030. The National Center for Disease Control (NCDC) has drafted the action plan in consultation with the Ministry of Fisheries, Animal Husbandry and Dairying. So what is rabies? Rabies is a fatal but preventable viral disease. This is very important from prelims point of view. It can spread to people and pets if they are bitten or scratched by a rabid animal. Rabies is mostly found in wild animals like bats, raccoons, skunks, and foxes, dogs, and most rabies deaths in people around the world are caused by dog bites. The rabies virus infects the central nervous system. If a person does not receive the appropriate medical care after a potential rabies exposure, the virus can cause disease in the brain, ultimately resulting in death. Rabies can be prevented by vaccinating pets, staying away from wildlife, and seeking medical care after potential exposures before symptoms start. So rabies affects virus transmission, saliva of infected animals. 99% of human cases are caused by dog bites. The virus attacks the brain. Rabies is fatal once symptoms appear. Treatment: thorough washing of the wound with soap and vaccine injections can avoid symptoms and save lives. Seek immediate medical care if bitten. How to prevent rabies transmission from dogs? Learn dog body language. No dog bite, no rabies. Raise public awareness. Okay, the fatalities. Rabies affects poorer rural communities, mostly in Asia and Africa. One death in every 10 minutes. 40% of the victims are children younger than 15. Vaccinating dogs saves human lives. Rabies is 100% preventable. Vaccinating 70% of dogs breaks rabies transmission cycle in an area at risk. Every dog owner is concerned. How is rabies transmitted? Rabies virus is transmitted through direct contact, such as through broken skin or mucous membranes in the eye, nose, or mouth, with saliva or brain nervous system tissue from an infected animal. Transmission. Rabies affects only the mammals. Rabies in India. India has around 20,000 rabies deaths in a year. Worldwide, over 59,000 people die every year from rabies, around 40% of them aged under 15. Rabies is responsible for extensive morbidity and mortality in India. The disease is endemic throughout the country. With the exception of Andaman and Nicobar and Lakshadweep Islands, human cases of rabies are reported from all over the country. The cases occur throughout the year. About 96% of the mortality and morbidity is associated with dog bites. So prelims important topics are about rabies, about the National Action Plan on Rabies Protection, about the NCDC. So source of this news is the PIB. Next is the anti-defection law for independent legislatures. It is from GS paper 2. Topic is Indian Constitution, historical underpinnings, evolution, features, amendments, significant provisions, and basic structure. So why it is in news? Independent MLAs from Gujarat's Vadgam constituency, Jignesh Mewani, has pledged support to the Congress party, saying though he has not formally joined the Congress, he has joined the party's ideology. Hence, provisions of the 10th schedule do not apply in this case. Relevance. The 10th schedule of the Indian Constitution, popularly known as the anti-defection law. It specifies the circumstances under which changing of political parties by legislatures invites action under the law. It was added to the Constitution by the 52nd Amendment Act. It includes situations in which an independent MLA who joins a party after the election. The law covers three scenarios with respect to shifting of political parties by an MP or an MLA. These include when a member elected on the ticket of a political party voluntarily gives up membership of such a party or votes in the House against the wishes of the party, when a legislator has won his or her seat as an independent candidate and joins a political party after the election. In the above two cases, the legislature loses the seat in the legislature on changing or joining a party. Relating to nominated MPs, in the case of nominated MPs or MLAs, the law gives them 6 months to join a political party after being nominated. If they join a party after such time, they stand to lose their seat in the House. So matters relating to disqualification. Under the anti-defection law, the power to decide the disqualification of an MP or MLA rests with the presiding officer of the legislature. The law does not specify a time frame in which such a decision has to be made. Last year, the Supreme Court observed that anti-defection cases should be decided by speakers in 3 months' time. However, legislatures may change their party without the risk of disqualification in certain circumstances. Exceptions. The law allows a party to merge with or into another party, provided that at least two-thirds of its legislators are in favor of the merger. On being elected as the presiding officer of the House, if a member voluntarily gives up the membership of his party and rejoins it after he ceases to hold that office, he won't be disqualified. So prelims important topics are names of various committees and commissions with regard to anti-defection law, committees versus commissions, decision of presiding officer versus judicial review, merger versus split of political parties, is anti-defection law applicable to the presiding officer, relevant Supreme Court cases and verdicts. The source of this news is the Indian Express. Next is the burden of climate change on children born today. Important for GS paper 3. Topic is conservation and pollution related issues. So why it is in news? A study was recently published by researchers on the impact of climate change on children born today. The study is based on data from the Intersectoral Impact Model Intercomparison Project (ISI-MIP). How was the study carried out? The ISI-MIP data was used alongside country scale, life expectancy data, population data, and temperature trajectories from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change (IPCC). Key findings: children born today will be hit much harder by extreme climate events than today's adults. During his or her lifetime, a child born in 2021 is likely to experience, on average, twice as many wildfires, 2 or 3 times more droughts, almost 3 times more river floods and crop failures, and about 7 times more heat waves compared to a person who is, say, 60 years old today. So what needs to be done? Under a scenario of current insufficient climate policies, dangerous extreme heat wave events, which affect about 15% of the global land area today, could treble to 46% by the end of this century. However, if countries are able to follow through with their climate policies as decided under the Paris Climate Agreement, this effect could be limited to 22%, which is just 7 percentage points more than the global land area that is affected today. Uh, we increase climate protection from current emission reduction pledges and get in line with a 1.5-degree target, we will reduce young people's potential exposure to extreme events on average by 24% globally. So what is the Intersectoral Impact Model Intercomparison Project (ISI-MIP)? So this is a community-driven climate impacts modeling initiative that assesses the differential impacts of climate change, initiated by the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research (PIK) and the International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis (IIASA), and has since grown to involve over 100 modeling groups from around the world. So who is involved? NGOs, private sector, policy decision makers. How is it carried out? ISIMIP is organized into simulation rounds which are guided by a focus topic. For each round, a simulation protocol defines a set of common simulation scenarios based on the focus topic. Participating modeling groups are provided with a common set of climate input data and other data, in some cases unique to one sector, necessary to ensure cross-sectorally consistent impact simulation. Important climate summits. These are some of the important climate summits: 2019 COP25 Chile, and these are some of the important summits which you can refer to. So source of this news is the Indian Express. Next is the Zojila Tunnel. Prelim specific topic. It is a prelim specific topic. So Zojila Tunnel will provide all-year connectivity between Srinagar Valley and Leh. It is said to be the Asia's longest bi-directional tunnel. It will connect Srinagar, Dras, Kargil, and Leh via a tunnel through the famous Zojila Pass. Located at more than 11,500 feet above the sea level, the all-weather Zojila Tunnel will be 15 kilometers long. It will make the travel on the 434-kilometer Srinagar-Leh section of NH1 free from avalanches, enhance the safety, and reduce the travel time from more than 3 hours to just 15 minutes. So context of this news is government is pushing to complete the massive Zojila Tunnel, its showpiece infra project in Kashmir and Ladakh, before Republic Day 2024. So these are all these places in news we have to remember for prelims. Okay. Okay. So prelims, World Maritime Day. It is important for prelims. So World Maritime Day is celebrated annually on 30 September. It aims to provide an opportunity to focus attention on the importance of shipping and other maritime activities, and to emphasize a particular aspect of the work of the International Maritime Organization (IMO). Theme for 2021 is Seafarers, at the core of shipping's future. So that's all in this video. Thank you so much for watching the current affairs analysis video. Have a nice day.